the frequency that we're resonating with is what we draw to us. If we're focusing on something positive, then we are focusing on the frequency of that thing and we are attracting that thing to us. And if we're focusing on something negative, then what we're focusing on is that frequency and we are drawing that thing to us. And to clarify, there are no good or bad frequencies. This is that piece of like living in this 3D reality where, we actually came here to have an experience of duality and separation and division and polarity. Frequency is neither good nor bad. However, what that frequency then creates in our life, depending upon where we are and energetically what we are in resonance with, will then make something negative or positive. This is Leah Steele, aka The Wealth Witch, and this is my podcast. I'm here to activate you to remembrance of your divine birthright to be wealthy in all areas of your life. This podcast is for people ready to have controversial conversations about the financial control, manipulation, and tyranny that faces humanity today. I'm gonna live in freedom. I'm gonna live my destiny. I'm gonna live my freedom. I'm gonna live, the time is right now. The Wealth Witch. It's for the people who are ready to wake up, deconstruct their wealth programming, and free themselves from the financial slavery consciousness that serves the global financial agenda. I'm committed to realizing a new global wealth paradigm where economic freedom is the reality and where you get to design and live the life of your dreams. Now let's do the damn thing. Today, I want to give you some of the foundations of the abundance formula. I do money and wealth differently than anyone I know. And while I think there's a lot of other people in the online space or in the wealth space or in the manifestation or abundance space that have similar ideas to me, the way that I combine it all together is quite different. And that is really for me what the abundance formula is about. And that's really what I'm looking forward to sharing with you in this time today and moving forward in the 3-hour abundance formula intensive. So the first thing that I really want to talk about is tell you a brief history of how I got to where I am now and how my money story began to shift and how I began to really tap into some of the concepts and some of the foundational principles that we're going to be talking about today. So I have always been a financially driven person. I started working really early at age 13. I had my first job. And from that point on, I really was never working less than 1 or 2 jobs. I worked concurrently going to school. I left my hometown of Salt Lake City, Utah when I was 19 and moved to New York City. And had only been there one time before, moved to New York City and started working in marketing, entertainment marketing, and business development, which was sort of my entire former life was really focused around marketing, whether that was entertainment marketing, sports marketing, and business development. And those were the areas where I really thrived and where I loved working. And I love networking. And more than anything, I really like connecting people together. So, that cultivation of mutually financially beneficial relationships is something that, really lights me up and that I get really excited about. So I spent 4.5 years in New York City working in entertainment marketing. I first worked for a newspaper syndicate, United Media, which is was at the time the largest newspaper syndicate in the world. I worked in their licensing department. So my clients were Peanuts and Dilbert, their kind of top cartoon products. And I worked in the licensing division for those products. I then moved on to a company called ISL Marketing AG, which at the time was the global marketing partner for FIFA, Federation of International Football. And we put on Women's World Cup in the United States. And, so at the time, I think I was 22.
and one of only a handful of executives around the world that were working on this project. Female executives, that is. FIFA and soccer are quite masculine in the way that they are managed. And so I, at 22, had this really, really incredible experience of putting on the largest women's sporting event in the world and being, a really integral part of that and the licensing that came along with that. So at 22 years old, my clients were Adidas, Mattel, Coca-Cola, and I was working with the head and lead executives of these, major companies and corporations. So I just, and I really believe that for me, even then, there was a big piece of me that understood the importance of, tapping into the divine guidance and taking inspired action when I received it. And, and I used to always say, oh, I just have good business instincts. I just have good business instincts. When the truth is that what actually has always gone on for me when it comes to business is that I have very, very strong, clear cognizance. I have a clear knowing of things that a lot of other people just don't know or don't have the information for. And that tends to be really relevant for me in business. I have it in my personal life as well. But where my clear cognizance is the strongest is in my business ventures, in marketing, in business development, in wealth creation. That's where my strength really lies. And so obviously it was a natural evolution, as I moved through the rest of this story to actually end up where I am right now, as the Wealth Witch, or, helping people with manifestation and creation. So here I just want to stop really quickly because this piece is vital and vitally important in the abundance formula. And that is your conscious cultivation of your connection to the highest level version of yourself, God, source, universe, all that is. If you've listened to me before, you know that I'm constantly talking about how I believe that we are God, that we are the macrocosm and the microcosm, that all things are connected, that we are one and also separate from God, source, universe, all that is. And again, as I always say, don't get hung up on the names, like insert whichever one works for you. We're all at different levels of our spiritual journey. I use them all interchangeably at this point. But this is something that even before I really knew I was doing it, I was doing, because I was always tapping into that inner knowing. And then there was always a part of me that knew, even before my spiritual reawakening, there was always a part of me that knew that there was a part of my brain or a part of my, at the time, like I wouldn't even have said it was like part of my spiritual being. I was raised by a very spiritual but non-religious mother. So I'd been exposed to all different forms of religion and theology. And so I definitely was a believer in a higher power, but at this point in my life, in my early 20s, I really wasn't tapping into spirituality. I have another story for another time, or I'm sure you can find it somewhere on the interwebs, where I talk about how I actually shut my spiritual gifts down around 7 or 8, and then had kind of been in full rejection of anything really spiritually related up until, this point, certainly, that we're talking about right now, and, many years in the future, until I really was activated in my spiritual reawakening. But I always kind of knew that there was this other part of me that knew more than my conscious mind knew. And so as a result of that, I knew that I had good intuition. I knew that, when I got my ego out of the way and allowed, whatever that was, sometimes I think, in my 20s, I really thought of it as like the more superior part of my brain that I couldn't access, but that sometimes I could tap into. But I did make it a priority to ask myself, or ask that part of myself, for guidance, or to, when I was getting into too much of a negotiation with myself, I always had a realization that internal dialogue, when it turned into a negotiation, wasn't going to take me anywhere good. And so I knew, just kind of in an innate way, to pattern interrupt, which is kind of like the next foundational piece. That when we get into those tapes or those inner dialogue negotiations with ourselves, where, we've cultivated the connection with our highest level self, God, source, universe, all that is, then we get the divine guidance and then we step into that place of negotiation. Like that's our ego trying to get in the way. And sometimes it's trying to get in the way because it feels like it needs to protect us, because it wants to keep us safe. Sometimes it's getting in the way because we're being lazy and it doesn't actually want to do the thing that it's been instructed to do. So the next piece of it is, and the thing that I kind of had this innate knowing and ability to do was pattern interrupt. So when the negotiation would start, I would distract myself. So I would just stop what I was doing and go do something entirely different to get that negotiation to stop. Because only when the negotiation stopped could I actually receive clarity on what the next right inspired action was for me to take. And so even though I didn't understand what I understand now about spirituality, even though I didn't understand what I understand now about my divine immortal soul being infinite in nature, and that there is this higher level version of myself that I can access at any moment, I didn't understand, my beliefs that I have now around unity consciousness and universal oneness, and that we are all, and all is mind, and, all of these other incredible concepts that, we're all familiar with, I'm sure, if you're, listening to this at this point. But it was very much, this was second nature to me. So I didn't really fully understand what was going on, but I knew how to tap into some of these things. And I knew that I could always manifest money. However, I was frequently and through my, 30s and, even now at times, frequently manifesting. I don't do it frequently anymore, but I still do it. But at this time was frequently manifesting under stress and duress. And I could manifest large amounts of money. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars, under stress and duress quite easily within short amount of time. And so I always kind of knew that I also had this manifestation power and capability. And that also was something that I was a little bit afraid of, that made me a little bit nervous, because not only was I manifesting good things in my life, but I was also equally manifesting negative things and things that I didn't want. So when I would focus on something, or the focus on the not wanting of something, it would manifest. And so I came up with, this slogan that you guys hear me say all the time, which is the next part, mind your mind, mind your mouth, very early on. Because what I realized, even in my early 20s, is that I was frequently speaking things into creation. And I was frequently thinking things into creation. And if I thought it and then I spoke it, it was compounded in the power of it coming to fruition. And in my 20s, unfortunately, a lot of this was negative because I didn't yet know that, what you focus on becomes frequency. And so that can kind of be step 4, I guess, is what you focus on becomes frequency. And everything is frequency. But with the frequency that we're resonating with is what we draw to us. And so if we're focusing on something positive, then we are focusing on the frequency of that thing and we are attracting that thing to us. And if we're focusing on something negative, then what we're focusing on is that frequency and we are drawing that thing to us. And, to clarify, there are no good or bad frequencies. This is that piece of like living in this 3D reality where, we actually came here to have an experience of duality and separation and division and polarity. Frequency is neither good nor bad. However, what that frequency then creates in our life, depending upon where we are and energetically what we are in resonance with, will then make something negative or positive, right? And even negative and positive isn't necessarily bad. As you know, I will always say that the things that I perceived to be the most negative in my life, the things that I perceive to be the most difficult, the biggest obstacles, the biggest challenges have every single time turned out to be the biggest blessings. So there is this piece of transmutation, even in the manifestation of something that you don't necessarily believe that you want in that moment, into something that can open a doorway for rebirth and regeneration for you. So remember that. I do think it's important to mind your mind, mind your mouth, and focus on the frequency that you desire to resonate with. I think those things are really important. But remember that if you do happen to manifest something that you think that you don't like, the next step for you is to really step into a belief that regardless of what's happening, the highest level version of yourself is always conspiring in your favor. So there's, a lot of people in this space will talk about how the universe is always conspiring in your favor. The universe is always conspiring in your favor. And you may have heard me say that in the past. And I don't actually believe that anymore, because I don't believe that the universe conspires. I believe that the universe is. I believe that we actually hold the power, that we are the most powerful creators in our reality. That when we show up, and energetically back something, that the universe then, that it's universal law, that the universe then shows up to support that thing. So if we're fully energetically backing something that we don't desire, the universe doesn't distinguish between that, right? The universe just delivers what we're focusing on to us. It's almost like a mirror. So that's my real vision and belief of what the universe is. Like, it shows up to meet us wherever we are. And if we send mixed signals, we get mixed results. What I do believe 100% is that the highest level version of you, your divine immortal soul that is infinite in nature, is always conspiring in your favor. And so even though something may look negative to you in your 3D reality that you're living in, operating from, the amount of mental capacity that you're operating from at any given time, that highest level version of yourself is operating as a multi-dimensional version of you that sees all and has the ability to see where incidences and events are occurring in this 3D reality that can then be transmuted into gold for you. And will help you on your path, and will help you on your journey, and will help you, learn the lessons that you came here to learn. So even in the times where we're not able to mind our mind and we're not able to mind our mouth, and we're perhaps focusing on a frequency that creates a reality that isn't necessarily the one that we want, when we step forward in faith in ourselves, and that's the thing I think that's really important. We step forward in faith of ourselves, the highest level version of ourselves, and that version of us is constantly steering us back on our path, that version of us is always looking out for us, that version of us has only got our highest and best interest at heart. Then that's where the real magic begins to occur, because we are not looking outside of self for someone to save us. We are not looking outside of self for someone to give us the answers. We're not looking outside of self for someone to give us the magic pill. It is actually us. And so in that conscious cultivation of that connection, like remembering it's us. It's us. We are the divine immortal being that is, guiding the chariot that is this like 3D physical meat vehicle that we live in, through its journey and lesson in this lifetime on planet Earth. So these are kind of like the real foundational principles of the abundance formula. And these are the things that you have to have, and that you have to be practicing on repetition. The power of repetition, so important. These are the things that you have to be practicing. And this is how, because this is how you come back into alignment with the thing that you deeply desire, is by going through all of these steps, is by reinforcing these steps to yourself over and over and over. And then we actually get to step into looking at our beliefs around money and what money is. And so we're going to tap into that a little bit right now. And then ultimately in the 3-hour intensive that I'm hosting next week, I am going to give you my formula for programming yourself wealthy. So these are all the foundational concepts that I'm sharing today here in this Facebook group for the Abundance Formula and on the podcast. But if you want to expand upon this, you're going to want to come and join us next week for the 3-hour intensive, which will be available on a replay for those of you that can't make it live or are listening to this podcast at a later date or watching this video at a later date. Like all of this is going to be available for you on replay. But then we're going to take a 3-hour intensive deep dive into the actual formula, into the codes. And I'm going to be actually programming the container with frequency as well. And we'll be talking about that. Codes, frequency, vibration, that will actually be being sent to the participants of the container during that 3-hour intensive. But I do want to talk right now a little bit about beliefs, your belief systems, because you've got two kinds of beliefs. You have beliefs that serve you and you have beliefs that don't serve you. Ultimately, all of it is perception. It is your perception of the reality that you're living in. And these things are a lot of what I work on deconstructing in like my signature wealth repatterning program, Ouroboros, in Mastering Your Spiritual Money Game, which is another program that's coming up here really quickly. That's a foundational money course. We'll put the links for that coming up. I think that's starting in April. But we have to repattern those things. But it's important to have a realization that they are just beliefs. They are not realities and they are not ultimately true. And so we have to begin to look at money for what it actually is, which is energy. It is just energy. So the currency that you currently have in your wallet, regardless of where you are all around the world, is if you've got physical currency in your wallet, either in the form of a coin or a piece of paper. Now, if it's the paper, it's literally paper, right? You're holding paper. It might be fancy paper. It might be imprinted paper. It might have some kind of seal put on it. It may have some kind of identifying safeguard to keep it from being counterfeited. But ultimately, at the end of the day, paper currency is just paper. And especially if you live in the United States, paper currency is definitely just paper. Like it doesn't have anything backing it other than you. So this is something that's really important to understand when we're talking about currency. You are actually what holds up the global economy. The global economy is not backed on actual resources. The United States has not been on the gold standard for a very, very long time. The US dollar is not backed by a precious metal or a resource. The US dollar is backed by bodies. It is backed by its citizens. It is backed by its birth certificates and social security numbers of its citizens. So what does that mean? Well, what that actually means is that you are the currency. Your energy, the energetic vibration of who you are is what currency is. It's what currency is backed by. So when I am constantly reminding you that you are the most powerful creator in your reality, that you are your guarantee, it's because you are. Not only are you your guarantee, but you are your government's guarantee. They are leveraging you as a being on this planet to serve their agenda. So now it's time for you to start using and leveraging yourself for your own financial benefit and gain. So it's a shift in mindset here that we really need to look at. Like, you did not come to this planet to be a slave or to be a commodity. You did not come to this planet to live in the financial internment that you're living in. You did not come to this planet to be programmed and conditioned with financial slavery consciousness. Each and every one of us that's living on this planet right now is being controlled and manipulated using money. And it's being done very successfully and very well. You have the power to take back your sovereignty. Because it's actually you that is the currency. It's actually you that is providing the security of your governments and of the nations that you live in. So if we can shift our mindset from that currency controls us or lack of resources controls us, that we can be controlled and manipulated using money and currency, and we can shift into a place where we recognize and we realize that we are actually what generates that energy. It is our energetic field, our ability to show up in the world and work and earn money and pay taxes that leverages this global economy. No more do those pieces of paper, have some portion of precious metal that's in a Federal Reserve or that's in a bank that's backing that currency. It just doesn't exist. And every currency is leveraged to at some level. And every currency is leveraged by its citizens. So I think that this is just really important information to have. And it's important for you to shift your beliefs around what money is and what money isn't. Okay. So what do we know about energy? Well, we know everything is energy. Like this is scientifically proven at this point, right? We know everything is energy. Money is no different. Money is energy. What else do we know about energy? Energy is unlimited. It is not finite. It is not limited. Okay. The reason that we have been separated from our belief that money is energy is because if we have an understanding that money is actually just energy, then we also have a belief that energy is unlimited. And as a result, money is unlimited. That does not serve the global financial agenda. That does not serve the control and manipulation programming that's happening to us. So we want to believe that it's limited because that allows us to stay in states of disempowerment, and continue to operate as the compliant commodities that we've been programmed and conditioned to be. Now, I did just say that you want that you want to stay in that place. And I actually do mean that because the majority of people do, because it is very, very uncomfortable to begin to look at your beliefs around what things actually are and what things actually aren't. Your perceptions of your reality. And then to be able to tap into, okay, wait a second. If I'm actually the guarantee and I'm what's actually backing this thing and energy is actually unlimited, then that means that I could be my own guarantee, that I have the ability to manipulate matter to my will, that I have the ability to create financial abundance in my life, and that I'm my guarantee. And I don't have to depend upon my governments or my employer or any of these other beliefs that we've been programmed and conditioned to believe from the time we took our first breath on this planet. I don't have to be a slave to those things. I don't have to live in financial internment anymore. I don't have to be afraid that everything's going to be taken away from me. I don't have to live in states of scarcity and lack. Because if I'm my guarantee and I'm energy and money is energy and energy is unlimited, then all I have to do is bring myself into resonance with the energy of money and with the amount, with the amount of money that I desire, with the amount of resources that I desire, with the amount of wealth I desire to accumulate. It's all about frequency and vibration and resonance. It's not about a piece of paper that's supposedly backed by resources, because it's not anymore. Even our coins have very little precious metals in them anymore, right? We're using other metals that are less valuable. So even the coins that we're using as currency don't hold the value that they used to hold. So if we take responsibility for how powerful we are and we step into that belief, or not even the belief, we step into the knowing that we are our guarantee, and we do all of the foundational steps that we talked about leading up to this, the next place that we have to go so that we don't continue to get pulled back into the trap is to remain in a state of inquiry and remain in a place where we are constantly curious about the things, about the propaganda that's being distributed to us. So we are not blindly following our governments, our financial institutions and organizations, our parents, even our grandparents, our neighbors, our best friends. Like, we are no longer blindly following along. This is a big part of the deconstruction process, but it's really important information to have. And it's a really important practice to be practicing every moment of every day if you are going to successfully implement the full abundance formula. So you have to be able to question everything and ask yourself if this thing that I believed always was true is actually a lie. And I mean, that's a little bit funny, right? Because in the word belief, what word is in the word belief? The word lie. Right? So if we believe that we believe something and we just take that at face value, we blindly follow the people that are pulling the puppet strings, we create perceptions and projections that are not truth. And it's very easy to be controlled and manipulated. And it's very easy for the twist to happen, or for us to be, for the spin to happen, to get us back into alignment with that belief, because that belief serves an agenda that is really, really committed to you remaining a commodity. So we have to stay in this state of constant curiosity, and we have to question everything. And we have to be willing to look at, especially the things that we believed always were true. We have to look at those things, even if they were told to us by our grandparents and our great-grandparents and our great-great-grandparents. And they are things that, like, we feel like in every fiber of our being is true. We have to ask ourselves, if this thing that I believed is true was actually a lie, who would financially benefit from me believing that lie? And if the person financially benefiting is a government, a regulatory body, a financial institution or organization, then you really need to look at deconstructing that belief, because it's not serving you. It's serving a program that's keeping you in your place. This stuff isn't easy. Like, I wish I could just be like, here's the abundance formula. Here is my 10-step process to manifesting wealth and programming yourself wealthy. I wish I could tell you that it was that easy. It's not. We are up against a system and a structure that's been operating for generations and generations and generations, that has been imprinting you to keep you firmly entrenched in the matrix, which is the global financial agenda. It is about power, it is about money, and it is not serving your highest and best good. This is how you begin to deconstruct. This is how you begin to step out. So I could give you all the steps of the abundance formula, but if you're not doing this, it's not going to work. At least it's not going to work sustainably. There are pieces of the abundance formula that I'm going to share with you next week that will work on their own and will manifest results and will bring in currency. But without this piece, without this exiting the program, without staying in constant states of curiosity, without questioning everything, you cannot create sustainable wealth. you also cannot fully receive all of the new abundance codes and wealth codes that are coming into this new paradigm. You just can't receive them because you're still firmly entrenched in that matrix. You're still firmly entrenched in that belief that you are dependent upon something outside of you for financial stability and security. So, welcome to my version of the matrix. Here's the thing. Here's the thing that I want to talk about though really quickly, because it is very important for us to deconstruct our programming and conditioning. It is very important for us to exit this existing matrix, this existing control matrix that we're living in. But it's equally as important to realize that we are the programmers as well. We've surrendered our power. We've given the programming power away to our governments, to our banks, to our regulatory bodies. We've simply surrendered it. We are also programmers, and we are more powerful than people that we've surrendered our power to. Well, why is that? Because you are the most powerful creator in your reality. You control your energetic field. Even in the surrendering of your field to someone else, they can't control your field as well as you can control your field. And we could go into all the science of like the torus and our energy fields and all of that stuff here, but we don't have enough time. Though I will be talking about that on in the abundance formula, because that stuff's really important to understand as we start to tap into manifestation. But you are the most powerful programmer in your reality as well. And you are doing yourself a disservice if you are not programming yourself wealthy on a daily basis. If you are not programming yourself to have everything that you deeply desire on a daily basis, if you are not programming yourself to receive all of the gifts that the highest level version of yourself desires you to have, if you are not programming the universe to meet you in a way that exponentially expands and enhances your experience on this planet, in this lifetime, in this timeline, in this new paradigm. So I will leave you with that for today. That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to connect with me on social media and reach out. I love hearing from you. And if you want more of me, real, raw, and uncensored, make sure to join the Wealth Witch Telegram channel. It's my free channel where I share all of my random daily musings, as well as the information that I feel like is important and pertinent to my community. We've put a link to the Telegram channel in the show notes, so make sure to come join us over there if that intrigues you. Remember, wealth is a mindset, and you are the most powerful creator in your reality. Until next time, this is the Wealth Witch signing off.
I'm gonna live. The time is right now.
Did you like what you heard in this episode? You've heard the foundations, now learn the actual formula by purchasing the full 3-hour intensive for only $44.
I do money and wealth differently than anyone I know. The way that I combine it all together is quite different. And that is really, for me, what the abundance formula is about. And that's really what I'm looking forward to sharing with you in the 3-hour abundance formula intensive.
Purchase the 3-hour abundance formula intensive that Leah talks about in this episode right now by visiting www.theabundanceformula.life. Join the Abundance Formula Intensive today for $44 and program yourself wealthy. Visit www.theabundanceformula.life and register today.